So we got some estimations on how hot the next generation consoles are going to run. Let's take a look at them. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. If you're new to this channel, maybe consider hitting subscribe if you like the content that you see. I'm going to be covering everything for the next generations of consoles, and I'll be getting the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 on day one and making lots of videos on those. So let's jump right into this. We got some estimations on how hot the next gen consoles are going to run: the PS5, the Xbox Series X, and the Xbox Series S. So as we know, last week we got some information about the Xbox Series X, where some of the people who got the preview models were saying that it ran a little bit hot on standby mode. It would get hot, but it was nothing really of too much concern, and it kind of got blown out of proportion in my opinion. And then we got other people who were saying it didn't run hot at all, like Young Yeah here saying that. Many asking about rumors that the Xbox Series X is prone to overheating. In my experience so far, no issues there. You'll obviously feel some hot air if you put your hand in front of the vent, and some parts of the console will feel warmer, but nothing extreme or out of the norm. And basically I think that's where the kind of confusion got. People were confusing a console with the power of the Xbox Series X getting hot and an overheating. They're meant to get hot, but it probably won't overheat. It's probably built properly that's not going to overheat. And then Aaron Greenberg coming out here and kind of debunking it, saying that the console will output some system heat out of the exhaust, just as any other console will. Our engineering team confirmed that the heat leaving the console is not significantly different than the Xbox One X. This matches my experience at home. Quiet, fast, and impressive power for the size. So the heating issues with the Xbox Series X, I mean, take it for you what you will, but the Xbox is going to produce heat. Now today we got some estimations of how hot the next generation consoles will run. Now obviously these aren't been tested yet, and this is just kind of estimations based off of the specifications of each console. And this unconfirmed report they're saying is that the PlayStation 5 runs hotter than the Xbox Series X, peaking at 65 degrees Celsius and 149 degrees Fahrenheit. Now this comes by the way of Roberto Serrano, who is a known next generation or console commentator. He is in his profile says he's a professional service delivery for DXC Italy, business analyst, web tech project specialist, and ex-PR and chief editor at 4news.it. Movies, video games, art, and music. Now this is what Roberto Serrano is saying about the temperatures of the PlayStation 5, the Xbox Series X, and the Xbox Series S. So with the PlayStation 5, he is estimating that it is going to run at 55 degrees Celsius and 131 degrees Fahrenheit. At peaks, it is going to be at 65 degrees Celsius, 149 Fahrenheit. The Xbox Series X, 52 degrees Celsius, 125 degrees Fahrenheit. And at peak, 62 degrees Celsius and 143 degrees Fahrenheit. And then the Xbox Series S being the coolest of them all, which we should all expect, being at 47 degrees Celsius, 116 Fahrenheit, and at peak 58 degrees Celsius and 136 degrees Fahrenheit. Now let's take a look at what people are saying. I mean, these are estimates. This is an unconfirmed report, so this may not be what they're actually running at, but based on the SoC size, the fans, and everything, this is Roberto Serrano's best prediction of how hot these consoles are going to run. Let's take a look at the comments. Obviously there's going to be disagreement as to what people think about this, because there's always disagreement on this kind of stuff. Let's look at here. Mr. Derma saying Xbox has power consumption of 300 watts and PS5 has 350 watts. It's just simple physics. It's going to run hotter. And this is most interesting to me, the fact that the PS5 is using 50 watts and is using similar CPU and weaker GPU just means they're going to probably insanely overclock that GPU, which kills efficiency. So the PS5 is probably going to be overclocking, and when it does overclock, it is going to get relatively hot and probably going to surpass the temperatures of the Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series S. We also have Keanu Reeves here weighing in on Twitter. All of these are quite low in temperature compared to PCs, but these estimations are highly unreliable. Temperature is something you measure, not something you estimate. What is the room temperature in this estimation? So many variables are missing. I mean, I would agree with that. There are variables missing with these consoles because they're going to be in different rooms in different areas in somebody's house, but at the same time you could somewhat estimate how hot these chips are going to run based off of their specifications alone. Then you have other people in here thinking that the PS5 will run cooler, saying that the PS5 fan will move 66% more air at the same speed. Pair this with the variable frequency that PS5 should be running much cooler than these values even under load. Now I don't know, I don't fully agree with that. I think like definitely both of these consoles are going to get super hot, and it's going to be up to that cooling solution to keep them cool and the way that they're designed to make them run optimally. Now if you remember the Xbox Series X, it has fixed clocks and the PlayStation 5 has variable clocks. Now the Xbox Series X already has more teraflops than the PlayStation 5, but this is a report from 3 months ago, Microsoft saying We could have used variable clocks for Xbox Series X, but we're not interested in teraflop numbers. Jason Ronald talked about this, saying, we focus on optimizing the developer experience to deliver the best possible experience for players, rather than trying to hunt down certain record numbers. We've always talked about consistent and sustained performance. We could have used force clocks, we could have used variable clock rates. The reality is that it makes it harder for developers to optimize their games, even though it would have allowed us to boost higher teraflops than we already had. But you know, that's not the important thing. The important thing is the gaming experience that developers can build. I mean, that's a great point. The Xbox Series X is going to have a more powerful GPU than the PlayStation 5, and it's going to have fixed clocks. So developers are going to be developing games based off of those clocks, and they're not going to have to worry about overclocking anything, whereas the PlayStation 5 has that variable, and they're going to want to overclock that GPU to get closer to the power of the Xbox Series X. And I mean, that could lead to the higher heats on the PlayStation 5. Now, obviously, with the PlayStation 5, they built a mammoth of a console. It's massive. Like, can't look at that and think it's not massive. That is just the way it is. That's the truth. And they definitely have really good cooling solutions in there with that massive heatsink, with that liquid metal, with that fan and everything. So they definitely took into account how hot they thought their SoC was going to get, especially with the fact that they're going to be overclocking it with those variable clocks. These consoles are all built by brilliant people on both sides, and they know how hot these things are going to get. They know the optimal way to build these consoles, and we're just gonna have to wait and see until we get both in our hands to see which one runs cooler, which one runs quieter, and which one runs more optimally. Now, like I said, the PS5 is massive. They put those great cooling solutions. Then you have the Xbox Series X, which they built like a mini PC tower, and I think it's a very cool design as well. I think that they know what they're doing, even though it looks all cramped and packed into that box, with the fan, with the way that they have the dual motherboards and everything like that. I honestly believe they know exactly what they're doing with making sure that this console is going to run smooth, optimally, and cool. So going forward, these consoles are both going to get hot, but they're supposed to get hot. As long as they're expelling that hot air, everything is going to be fine. But if you're somebody who's really interested in the actual makeup and design of everything with the engineering, and you want to know which one is going to run hotter based off of the way that they are right now, based off of these estimations, it seems like the PlayStation 5 is going to be the hotter running console. Anyways, guys, I just wanted to talk about this because there's been a lot of talk in the last week about the hotness of the consoles. That kind of sounds weird, but you know how hot they get. I would love to hear your thoughts about this in the comments below, as I'm sure you guys will have a lot to say about this. Do you believe that Roberto Serrano is on point at all with his estimations? Do you think that these are completely off base? And which console do you think is going to run hotter? Thank you guys all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. If you like staying up to date on the next generations of consoles, make sure to subscribe to this channel, and I'll be getting the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5 on day one and making tons of videos on that. So thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.